Housing should be a basic right, right? But for many, it feels like a luxury. Why? Leaving entire communities without jobs. The town dries up. Small businesses close. Schools lose funding, and families are forced to leave. A study found out that the wealthiest 1% are responsible for more carbon emissions than the poorest 50%. Hi, my name is Paulo Tobibi, founder and CEO of NotLeap, a real estate investor, a landlord, and a lover of storytelling on history. Now, imagine this. A single decision by a billionaire, someone you've never met, makes your rent unaffordable, puts your job at risk, or even contribute to climate disasters. It sounds like a far-fetched movie plot, right? But this is real life, and these decisions are happening every day, from penthouse in New York to the slums in Nairobi. The influence of this ultra-rich is reshaping our world, and most of the time, we are left paying the price. Today, we are peeling back the curtain to show you how the wealthiest 1% impact every single one of us, from skyrocketing house prices to political corruption, environmental damage, and economic inequality. The reach of these decisions is far and wide. This isn't just about pointing fingers, it's about understanding the system and what it means for the rest of us. So grab a seat. We are diving deep into the hidden ways the ultra-rich reshape our lives. Let's start with something we all need, a place to live. Housing should be a basic right, right? But for many, it feels like a luxury. Why? Because billionaires treat housing as a way to grow their wealth, not as homes for people. Take New York City, for example. Billionaires buy up luxury apartments in Manhattan and leave them empty. These so-called ghost apartments sit there unused while the city faces a housing crisis. Rent for a tiny one-bedroom apartment can cost thousands of dollars a month. It's the same story in London, Hong Kong, and even in Mumbai. In the developing countries, it's even worse. Nairobi, for example, has seen skyrocketing land prices driven by wealthy investors. Entire communities are displaced, forced to move into overcrowded informal settlements like Ibarra. Here's the kicker. These slums often lack proper sanitation, clean water, or electricity. Meanwhile, just a few miles away, luxury developments remain half empty, built to attract only the elite. And don't get me started on gentrification. When billionaires decide to invest in an area, they don't just improve it. They price out the very communities that made it special. Some businesses shut down, families are forced to leave, and the cultural heart of the neighborhoods is replaced by high-end coffee shops and designer boutiques. Now, let's zoom out to the bigger picture here. The economy. You have probably heard this before. A rising tide lifts all boats, right? Billionaires and corporations love this phrase because it suggests that their success benefits everyone. But let me ask you this. What happens if you don't have a both? Take the example of factory closures in the US. A billionaire decides it's cheaper to move production to another country, leaving entire communities without jobs. The town dries up. Small businesses close. Schools lose funding, and families are forced to leave. Now, let's look at the flip side in developing countries. Factories in Bangladesh or Vietnam might create jobs, but these jobs are often exploitative. Workers are paid pennies, work long hours in unsafe conditions, and have no job security. Remember the Rana Plaza collapse in 2013? Over 1,000 garment workers lost their lives because a building owner ignored safety warnings. And yet, the billionaire brands they were producing for kept raking in profits. In both cases, whether it's the developed or developing world, the ultra-rich win and the workers lose. Billionaires claim to be job creators, but the truth is they often create instability, not security. Now, this part might make your blood boil. Billionaires don't just hold wealth, They hold power. In developed countries, they fund political campaigns, lobby lawmakers, and shape policies to protect their interests. Take the US for example. Billionaires like the Koch brothers have poured in billions into lobbying for tax cuts, deregulation, and climate denial campaigns. These policies benefit businesses but hurt everyone else. Less regulation means more pollution. Tax cuts for the rich mean less funding for schools, hospitals, and guess what? Public services. In developing countries, the situation can be even more blatant. In South Africa, the Gupta family essentially bought political influence to shape government policies in their favor, a scandal known as state capture. The result? Corruption ran rampant and public services collapsed, leaving ordinary citizens to suffer. This is no different in other African countries like Nigeria, Cameroon, and the rest of them. When billionaires control politics, they ensure that the system works for them, not for the people. And here's the real kicker. They don't just avoid paying their fair share. They make sure you pick up the tab. Now, let's talk about the environment. Climate change is defining issues of our time. And guess who's driving it? The richest 1%. A study found out that the wealthiest 1% are responsible for more carbon emissions than the poorest 50%. Think about that. Take private jets for example. A single flight emits more CO2 than an average person produces in a year. Now multiply that by hundreds of flights a year, and you start to see the problem. And don't forget the mega yachts, which are basically the floating cities that guzzle fuel like there's no tomorrow. Meanwhile, the people who suffer the most from climate change are often the poorest. Rising sea levels are swallowing entire communities in the Pacific Islands. Droughts are devastating farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. Floods are displacing families in Bangladesh. And yet, the billionaires responsible for these emissions continue to profit from industries that pollute our planet. Finally, let's talk about the one that really affects your pockets. Let's talk about taxes. Or the lack of them. Billionaires have entire teams of accountants and lawyers whose sole job is to make sure they pay as little tax as possible. Whether it's through offshore accounts or share companies, they exploit every loophole in the book. Take Jeff Bezos. In 2011, Amazon pays zero federal taxes in the US, despite making billions in profit. Meanwhile, in countries like Kenya, corporations owned by the wealthy elite often avoid taxes entirely, depriving governments of billions in revenue. And who pays the price? We do. When billionaires don't pay taxes, governments cut public services, raises taxes on the middle class, or borrow money, pushing nations into debt. It's a rigged system. So, where does this leave us? The decisions of the ultra-rich impact every aspect of our lives, including myself, from the roofs over our heads to the air we breathe. But here's the thing. We don't have to accept this as the status quo, do we? We need to demand accountability, push for policies that close tax loopholes, regulate industries, and protect public interests. Support organizations and leaders who prioritize people over profits. As long as billionaires hold wealth and power, the rest of us will continue to bear the burden. So, the next time you see a billionaire launching themselves into space, ask yourself, who's really paying for that ticket? Spoiler alert, it's not them, it is you. So, what do you think? Should billionaires be held accountable for their impact on society? Or is this just the price of progress? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the issues that matter. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.